Hey guys, welcome to the video where I'm detailing 7 ways Shattered Space fixes Starfield, and these are things the DLC didn't really advertise, so a lot of them you might not even be aware of. Some of them are buried in the menus and things like that, so you have to really go looking for them in order to find them. But when you do, it makes Starfield a whole lot better, and in some cases worse, which I will tell you about later on in the video. So make sure to keep watching. And also subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content, because I have a lot more coming. But the first thing I want to talk about is a feature that changes how you build spaceships. This feature is called Flip Merge. It was introduced into Starfield with Shattered Space, and what this does is basically give you more freedom in how you make ships. To find it, you have to go into the menu and scroll down. This is not switched on by default, so a lot of players might have missed this, and you would be completely forgiven for missing this yourself. So yeah, head here in the menu to switch it on, and now you can use Flip Merge. But what exactly is Flip Merge? Well, essentially, it lets you attach new parts to your ship you wouldn't normally be able to attach. These parts would usually just clip straight through the structure of your ship and make it look all messy, but with Flip Merge enabled, you can attach these parts. It's a way to come up with really creative builds and merge different parts to make new shapes and new structures, because by default, the Starfield ship creator can be quite restrictive. Now, if you think this feature seems familiar, it's because Flip Merge was a feature in Starfield originally, but it was more of a glitch. So you could glitch parts together by flipping them, then merging them, hence the name of this feature. With Shattered Space, however, what they've done is to turn this from a glitch into a feature. So that's the first somewhat obscure way the DLC fixes Starfield, and here's some gameplay of that in action. But if you want to skip ahead to the next chapter, use the chapters on the timeline below, because the next entry is something that improves the combat in Starfield, and it looks pretty cool. Onto another improvement Shattered Space makes to Starfield, and that is that robots and turrets will now take damage from EM weapons. The result of this is that EM weapons are now much more useful in Starfield, because I found towards the end of the game in Starfield you will encounter a lot more mechs and a lot more turrets and robots, especially the Combat Robot Model A, which is one of the toughest enemies in the game, period. I don't like coming up against these guys. So now you can rely on your EM weapons to do damage to robots and turrets. So which EM weapons do I recommend after Shattered Space has come out, which is now? Well, what I suggest is to grab the Brawler's Equinox, and this you can get from Apex Electronics in the Well, which is underneath New Atlantis. That is a great EM weapon. Another EM weapon that's really good is the Nova Blast Disruptor, and this one you can buy from Laredo Firearms in Aquila City. So those are two pretty good EM weapons to use against robots and turrets. Now, if you've not really used EM weapons before, here's a little rundown of what EM damage does. EM damage basically disables enemies without killing them. So instead of losing HP, enemies hit with electromagnetic damage, they spawn a non-lethal takedown gauge above their health bar. When this gauge is full, the enemy gets knocked out. And what this does is it makes non-lethal playthroughs possible. So if you don't feel like a stone cold murderer and you don't want to play that kind of lethal playthrough, you can play that way. And against robots and turrets, EM weapons will completely destroy them, which gives you a new reason to use EM weapons. If you don't have any EM weapons, you can actually mod existing weapons to do EM damage. So you can actually convert non-EM weapons into EM weapons. To do that, head to a weapon workbench and then craft either the electromagnetic beams or the EM charged shot. These are the two mods that can turn your weapons into EM weapons. The next way Shattered Space fixes Starfield is actually not a positive, this is a negative. This is a way it fixes Starfield in a bad way, and by that I mean it takes out one of the features that was being used by players to make money. So with Shattered Space comes Bethesda addressing an issue that could allow you to sell non-sellable ships to vendors. But that glitch has now unfortunately been taken out, so this does indeed fix Starfield, but sadly it doesn't fix it in a good way. And I mean, I can understand if this was a multiplayer game with an online economy, because then this glitch would imbalance other players' experiences. But in a single player game, I'd say keep glitches like this in, keep them intact. They're not hurting anybody. If you want to use it, great. If not, avoid it. But Bethesda has taken it out, and they fixed Starfield in a manner of speaking. Thankfully, though, the next entry on this list is a feature that fixes Starfield in a good way. So on to the next entry, and this is to do with the graphics of Starfield. Shattered Space introduces lighting changes and enhancements visually, and this is throughout the game. I didn't really expect them to improve the graphics at this stage of the game. It's been out for a year. Usually you get patches at this point, and they just bring along bug fixes and quest fixes and things like that, but the graphics are better following the release of Shattered Space, which is kind of unusual. And this is particularly true in interiors, because here is when you will see the lighting at its maximum. Planets look good as well, but there's not a lot of, multiple lighting sources going on. But with interiors, you get the shadows being cast on walls. You get the directional lighting from light sources and things like that. It is hard to tell in a YouTube video because there is always some compression going on, but just for comparison's sake, I will leave some gameplay up on the screen of Starfield pre and post Shattered Space. So, on the left we have vanilla Starfield, and on the right we have Shattered Space Starfield. Have a look at the lighting in particular and see if you can notice a difference. I think you can. I think it is not very noticeable, but it makes a difference. Next up, Shattered Space lets you add way more creations to the game, and that's another way it fixes Starfield. So, the official patch notes say it's resolved an issue that limited the number of loaded creations to 255. In other words, well, before Shattered Space, you could only have up to 255 active creations. That was your limit. That's all you could have loaded into your game. But post Shattered Space, there is no such limits. In fact, actually, Bethesda hasn't said what the limit to the amount of creations you can have now is, so it might be that there is no limit on this. Maybe it's only affected by your system memory. That's always a good sign, because it means this is basically Bethesda saying you're meant to be using creations in combinations with each other. They want you to be enabling dozens or even hundreds of creations at once. And to the game's credit, I've not really had any creations be incompatible with each other. These are all running smoothly to date. I've not managed to get up to the cap of 255 creations simultaneously, but honestly, I keep downloading more of these every week, so it's only a matter of time until I get up to that. But now there is no cap, so you can have way more than 255. The final way Shattered Space fixes Starfield is with grenades. It adds 5 more grenades, and these are a lot more interesting and inventive. So now going the explosives route with your character and leveling up your explosives is a viable character path. You can play the role of the demolition person. Well, the new grenades introduced in Shattered Space are the following. We have binding grenades, which freeze enemies, charge grenades, which have a large blast radius and look pretty cool. We have the lore grenades, which summon vortex horrors, and this reminds me a bit of those summon spells in the Elder Scrolls, where you could summon a little imp to help you out in fights. What else do we have? We have phasing, which phases enemies out of existence, and the unstable grenade, which is the weirdest one of them all. This one is a random combination of any of the previous effects, so anything can happen when you throw an unstable grenade. To unlock them, there are 2 story quests you will have to complete. These are, first, What Remains, and the second one is called The Promised Broken. The vortex grenades are unlocked after completing The Promised Broken, and you can craft them at any industrial workbench. Each crafting recipe requires 1 vortex shard, and a vortex cyst, which are randomly dropped by various vortex enemies. These are, you know, the vortex horrors and the vortex phantoms. Now, in total, we have 16 explosives in Starfield, which is enough. I think we don't even need any more. That's more than a dozen. We have enough there. Previously, the total was 11 and consisted of the frag grenade, frag mine, impact grenade, the shrapnel grenade, the cryo mine, the incendiary grenade, just reading off my list here, the inferno mine, the particle grenade, the stun mine, the Tesla pylon, and the toxic gas mine. So we did have a mix of explosives, but nothing we hadn't really seen in games before. So we just had the grenades that blow up and the grenades that have status effects. But with Shattered Space, we actually have inventive grenades, exciting grenades, with some kind of supernatural elements in them. Plus, as well as that, we have the new gameplay loop of having to actually hunt down these crafting ingredients from various vortex enemies and then craft the grenades, and that gives you really new things to do. Which, yeah, so it's good. That's the way it fixes Starfield. More grenades and more reason to craft them. So those were 6 ways Shattered Space fixes Starfield. Let me know what you think of those. Do you think it really has a big effect on Starfield? Or, you know, do you reckon it doesn't have a big effect? I think these fixes are pretty good. My favourite is probably the new grenades. Some of these fixes aren't that amazing. Like the flip merge thing, it was already in the game. Now it's just a feature, but it's still good all the same. But let me know what you think of these fixes, guys. And as ever, if you enjoyed the video, do give it a like. And if you want more Starfield videos, subscribe to the channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.